Right. Okay. Thank you. Welcome to the Ealing Council Boundaries Panel meeting. We are back in the council chamber for the first time for a long time, but we are meeting under still COVID protocol. So please keep your masks on unless you're speaking, like now. And when you're leaving the meeting, just keep the follow the one-way system. Okay. Sorry. Yes. Okay. I am Councillor Chris Summers. We have several councillors in the chamber tonight, and one following remotely. So I'm going to go straight through the agenda because we have a very busy agenda. Starting with apologies for absence. There is one from Councillor Bassem Mahfouz, who is on holiday. No other apologies. Matters to be considered in private, I don't believe there are any. Urgent matters, I'm just going to mention the Hobain by-election, which has been already sorted out. A polling place change was needed. It had to be dealt with urgently, and Helen Harris sorted it out. That by-election takes place on the 16th of September. Any declarations of interest? No, shouldn't be. And the minutes, I don't know if you've read them, especially any who were on that meeting, the minutes of the 23rd of February. Can we agree those? Okay, and then we are straight on to the main business of the evening, which is the boundaries report and polling place review and proposals for 2022 council elections. We're going to go through this alphabetically.
Would you like me to introduce it, Chair, at all?
Yes,
You're just
sorry,
happy
please
to dive
introduce it in overall before we go ward by ward.
Thank you, Chair. Just briefly, I'm sure members have read the report, and the report comes to you towards the end of quite a long process, which will end in May 2022, when our local council elections take place on the basis of revised new ward boundaries, which were agreed by the Boundaries Commission, I think a couple of years ago now, following a long consultation exercise that involved this panel actually and the council. As you know, the council has a legal duty to ensure that there are adequate polling places for all our electors, polling facilities for all our electors, including polling places. And whereas we fulfill that duty on a rolling basis, as the Chair just said, we've recently agreed a change to in relation to the Greenford by-election, sorry, the Hobain by-election. But this, the proposals here are obviously much more fundamental because they've had to be because of the ward boundary changes and in fact creation of an additional council ward. So the timetable, as officers have suggested to you, is very tight, and the reason for that is that although it's not a statutory requirement, our recommendation is that if at all possible, we agree revised polling place arrangements before the new electoral register is published on the 1st of December. It's not a statutory requirement, as I said, but if if we do it later, then it could be quite confusing for our electors and indeed for the people who are planning and working with our registers. So with that in mind, what you're being asked to do today is to consider and then approve a set of proposals that will go out for public consultation. So if we can agree them tonight, then that consultation will begin next Monday, the 6th of September, run for a month. Officers will then consider the outcome of the consultation and bring back a further report to this panel for you to consider all the findings of the consultation. So these are not final arrangements. Those will be agreed following the conclusion of the public consultation procedure. So, Chair, the other thing I would like to say is that remotely we have Ross Jackson, our head of elections, Santok Kudale, a senior elections officer, and also perhaps most usefully for the purpose of this exercise, we have Darren Bestley, who is our IT and council IT and mapping guru. The maps have all been drawn up by Darren, and he's been with us for very many years. He knows all the wards and locations much better than I will ever do, along with Santok, actually, who works on the ground to each election to put everything in place. So Chair, over to you.
Just before I come to you, Councillor Woodruff, that just reminds me that we've got Councillor Sabiers, who is attending the meeting remotely. He's muted, but just to clarify that, obviously, as most of you know, if you are not attending physically, you cannot vote at a meeting. So he is unable to vote, but he is able to observe and comment. Councillor Woodruff, you wanted to say something?
Yeah, I just wanted to, well, first of all, just to make it clear, we're just talking about polling stations. We're not talking about boundaries or anything like that. Secondly, how actually is the consultation going to work? How will people be consulted? What's the situation? How's that going to happen?
I'll let Helen answer that.
And I'm going to pass on to Ross, actually, in terms of details of the consultation. What I can answer in regard to the boundaries of the wards, actually it works without me taking my mask off, doesn't it? Those were dealt with a couple of years ago in the process that I described in my introduction. In fact, I do recall that Councillor Ball was part of the committee that dealt with that.
I've got a councillor messaging me or ringing me. Yeah, Councillor Ball.
Yeah, just a general comment before we get on to the individual wards. Not that it's very important, but I find it quite confusing, and I think it will be confusing to activists of the parties, that the same polling district letters are being used for different parts of the ward. So I think we can look at that for the final version, whether they could be, probably the simplest would be to just use different letters where it's significantly different, you know, use ones at the top of the alphabet or something. But, you know, I mean, activists from all parties know that, you know, EB is the estate at the bottom of my ward and it's turned into the northeast corner. I think it's just unnecessarily confusing to have the same letters referring to different places.
Yes, that has been mentioned by some other councillors. And Councillor Kelly, is your point on that or something totally different? Ross, would you be able to sort of come back to us on the letters naming and... Oh, yes, and the full details of the consultation which Councillor Woodruff was asking about.
You're muted, Ross. We can't hear you at the moment. It looks, the system's showing you as unmuted, but we can't hear you, Ross. I wonder if there's a problem with your mic or something. We still can't hear you, Ross. I'm not sure what's happening.
Yeah, sometimes it works to, you know, check out and come back in again, Mike. Yeah, Santosh might be able to. Unless we, I'm not sure if we can hear Santosh either.
Hello? Can anybody hear me?
Yes, we can hear you, Santok, but we can't hear Ross, unfortunately.
Yeah, I think he's.
Ross, maybe if you log out and in again, that might try that.
Santosh, are you able to assist on the questions that were asked about consultation and the naming of the wards? Sorry, the polling district.
The polling district letters.
Ross will be on out.
Yes.
Yeah, okay. The way we have done it is that starting from the top, we have gone sort of clockwise in naming the polling district. So taking, for example, FA, it should be roughly at the top, and then you go clockwise, FB, FC, FD, and so on. That way, the same format applies to all the wards. We thought this would be, I understand if EB changes to something else or it's changed to something else, but if we worked on the system, then I think eventually everybody will get used to it. So that was the reason behind naming the wards, the polling district this way. Regarding consultation, I think Ross will be in a better position to answer that question.
Hello, Chair, can you hear me now?
Yes.
Yes.
Yes, we can.
Thank goodness. Apologies. I was just going to pick up on there were two questions. One with regards to the naming of the polling districts. I don't know whether Santok's covered that. I think obviously we're moving from 23 to 24 wards. They're all new polling districts. In the past, there were 3 letters polling districts, ADA, for example, and they were historic due to bordering parliamentary lines that went through wards, etc. So we just thought that it would be sensible to start afresh and start AA, and we've kind of gone in clockwise order around the borough, but very happy if members feel strongly and they want those changed. But I think there's going to be confusion with these letters because of course they are going to be different for the very nature of what we're doing here. We won't be able to I mean, I think if we tried to keep some old letters, that would be even more confusing. So that's the reasoning behind it. It's a fresh new 24 wards, fresh polling districts, fresh letterings. So that was in answer to that. In answer to the consultations, so all being well, we'd like to go out to public consultation for 1 month between the 10th of September and the 11th of October. Now, what that will involve is some pretty heavy comms work. We'll do a report. We'll seek feedback from the public, political parties, charity groups. We'll also send the report to said groups and inviting any kind of representations they wish to make on the proposals, which will then in turn bring back to this panel, hoping to do so around about mid-October.
Thank you very much for that. Councillor Ball, you want to come back on that? I mean,
Yeah, just very
my
briefly.
point on the polling district, personally, I think only the very politically engaged know, you know, what their polling district is. It doesn't really make a lot of difference.
No, that's right. I think it's more of an issue for the party activists than it is for the general public. But I mean, my suggestion would be to start with the middle of the alphabet. So start at like AL or something, so that they're not, that the last letter is never the same as it used to be on the old ones. So if you go, instead of going ABC, if you go LMN, then that would avoid the problem of having a different place with the same polling district name.
I'm sure Ross can consider that. Councillor Kelly, I know that Councillor Sabiers wants to speak, so you'll come in a minute. Councillor Kelly first.
Yeah, I want to be clear what I'm doing here, because there's in my view, and we'll come to the nature of it, there's a glaring paucity of democratic, service here with one ward. Now, if it's decided tonight is voted that we're going to go ahead with what's in here, what options are open to me as a member to put in representations for a polling station somewhere else? Will that form part of the public consultation? It's about, I want to sort of know how, what I can do tonight, and what I can, if I'm not successful tonight, what I can do further down the line.
I'm going to bring Helen in a second, but just to say that obviously we have the report which sets out the recommended polling stations, but we have had a lot of views expressed, and there are previous polling stations which have been used, which are no longer mentioned in this. We will have a full debate on each ward, or especially those wards where there's comment made. But Helen, do you want to come back on the longer process? What happens?
This boundaries panel will take the final decision. If we stick with our current timetable, the boundaries panel will take the final decision in late October. What will happen from next Monday, again, subject to the outcome of this meeting this evening, is that a public consultation will begin. And that public consultation will happen on the basis of the proposals that this panel agrees this evening. So if I can put it this way, you don't get your way on particular proposals, and I have no idea which ones those are, I don't need to know, then you will have two more opportunities, given that you are a member of the boundaries panel. First of all, you can make representations in the course of the public consultation, as all of us can. And those representations will come back then to this panel all being well in a report of mid to late October. The panel will then consider the outcome of the public consultation, and you will be part of that panel discussion. So and you also have the opportunity, I assume, to work with your party group, which could also make representations in the course of the consultation, should it wish to do so.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you, Helen.
Thank you. Councillor Sabiers.
Thank you very much, Chair. I noted the comments about not being able to vote, but thank you very much for allowing me to join remotely. I've got two questions. One, I think, is more of a yes/no answer. Regarding the consultation, do we think 4 weeks is enough time for people to be able to respond? I expect the answer is yes, but I just want reassurance on that factor. And then secondly, I actually want to follow up on Councillor Ball's comments regarding the polling districts. And I know it's probably a bit more of a polling or psephologist nerd kind of approach in terms of knowing the numbers, or like DVA, for example, is a specific one. But I think just for to limit confusion, the suggestion of maybe starting later in the alphabet, or not doing ones that exist before. So if we had EB before, we don't have an EB again, we have an EC or ED or whatever it was that we didn't have. I just think, just to limit any extra level of confusion when someone goes, oh, my polling station has always been DVA, I'll go there. So I just think that's worthwhile taking on board. But I'm happy to let Ross and so work that out through. And I think the clockwise approach actually works quite well. So those are my two comments. Thank you, Chair.
Ross, straight back to you.
Yeah, we'll take that away. I can see the argument.
Sorry, could I just interrupt and ask if Ross could turn his camera on? I think that would help the viewing experience for those who aren't in the room. Thank you. Sorry, Chair.
I think I may be having some technical difficulties with my camera, but can you see it now? Yeah, are we okay? Everybody hear me?
Yes.
Yeah, sorry. Yeah, okay. No, take that away. Yeah, we can certainly do that. So on the premise that we use letterings that haven't been used before, we can fairly straightforward. We can do that. So leave that with us, and we'll take that away in time for when we go out to public consultation.
Thank you.
There was another question, Ross, I think, in terms of whether, from Councillor Sabiers, on whether 4 weeks was adequate. I could answer that if you prefer, or you.
Yeah, happy for you, Helen. I think 4 weeks is plenty. I mean, obviously, we won't just be doing comms. We will actually be sending letters requesting representation. So that's to all councillors, to all political parties, all groups that we know of, community groups. So we'll be very proactive on top of that 4-week consultation. It won't be hidden away on page, in the middle pages of the local newspaper. We will be proactively letting it be known that this consultation is taking place, and actually directly sending requests for representations to the main groups.
Okay, yeah, I mean, obviously, you said the consultation will start on what date in September? No.
So from the 10th of September to the 11th of October. But again, I mean, if the panel thinks we should increase that by a week or so, I mean, we are running to a very tight schedule in order to meet this 1st of December deadline. Helen, I don't know what your views are, but I mean, we could extend it by a week on that, I suppose.
I mean, we're in the panel's hands. I mean, the other option, of course, is to wait for the end of the consultation and see whether the panel considers it's been adequate, and we could run a further consultation if you wanted to do that. But obviously, that would. For a range of reasons, we're later starting this consultation than we had hoped, but by starting it in September, obviously we miss the holiday period. Personally, I don't think the proposals are massively complex, and I think most of the consultees will actually be commenting on a small number. The party political groups I think are probably already quite engaged in the exercise. And the other thing to bear in mind, of course, is that polling stations can be updated, changed at quite short notice if required in the future.
Yeah, personally, I think 4 weeks should suffice, but we'll have our meeting sometime in the middle to late October, I think. So hopefully, if there's any very important responses that come back and miss the deadline, they can still be mentioned at the meeting. Councillor Woodruff.
Yeah, it's
I'm keen to move on with the grist of the meeting.
But I think we're having sort of general questions before we get on to local, and this is general thing. I mean, because it's happened to me. If you're a voter and your polling station changes, you'll still get the little card that comes through, but you've been voting for ages and you don't read the card because you just think, oh, I know where it is. So it would be useful if there was something on the front to say, please note changes, that something like that, just to say it's changed, read the back, because otherwise people will, what happened is mine, people were, on the polling day, people were going to they were going to Little Ealing School. Fabio will know about it, but it changed the log cabins. Lots of people had gone to Little Ealing School and found they had to go back to log cabin. And if there'd been something on the card to just say, change, your polling station's changed, it would have been a lot easier.
That seems like a very good idea, although, as we all know, that people sometimes don't even read what's on the headlines.
No, some people don't even look at the cards, but yes, we can certainly, I can speak for Ross and his team and say we can certainly take up that useful suggestion in the design of the polling cards.
We do actually put new polling place on the polling card if there has been a change.
I think, if I may as well, just to add to Santox, yeah, we do put on the front new polling place, and we do put up signs at the old polling place, obviously, to say this is no longer a polling place, you need to go to this one. There is the option to do a write out at the end of all of this and write to every single elector to tell them that the polling stations changed for the future, but there is a cost implication to that. I mean, top of my head, it'll probably cost over £100,000 to do it. I do think that the polling card should suffice. It's got the information on the front, it's got the map on the back. We will obviously be running quite a lot of comms on this once this is all finalized anyway. So around Ealing, I'm sure we'll show all this detail, and clearly on our websites we'll do some kind of fanfare about it all. But they're the options that are open. But as Santox says, it is clearly marked on the front of the card as whenever there's a change, and obviously the map on the back, and we do put notices up at all polling stations to say this is no longer your polling station, go to this one. Okay, Helen, quickly.
Very quickly, Chair. Yes, just a plea. Obviously, we're in your hands, Boundaries Panel, but bear in mind we have roughly 250,000 electors, so you do the maths. It costs, as Ross said, north of £100,000 to do a single mail out to all our electors. So please think quite very carefully before asking us to spend that amount of money on a mail out.
Democracy costs money.
Yes, that's what we'll be balancing tonight. Councillor Conti, I think you wanted to say something.
Oh, it's like Ross has sort of covered it. I was suggesting around Ealing to advertise it as a sort of mechanism that's already there, rather than printing another letter out. That's what I was going to say. Oh, isn't it?
Okay, that's a good point. Okay, we're going to crack on with the ward by ward, but bear in mind we have 24 more wards. Obviously, one of them is a brand new ward to go through, so please keep your comments as brief as possible. So obviously these are totally new names of wards, and large, some of them have been very largely sort of redrawn, but I'm sure you'll all recognise them. And we're going to start with Central Greenford. So Ross will, sorry. Oh yeah, so Darren, can you put these up as I mention them, and then Ross, if you very briefly explain what we're seeing on the map, and then anyone on the panel who has any comments, please raise their hand. If you don't have any comment about a ward, we don't need to say it, we can just move on. But Central Greenford starting.
Okay, I'll just while Darren finds Central Greenford, so we'll run in alphabetical order. I think makes sense. So faced with this ward, we were proposing a total of 5 polling places in this ward: MA, MB, MC, MD, and ME. Now, I believe from the responses from the portfolio holder, the concern that I think certainly from that side, they were happy with MA, MB, MC, and ME, but it was MD where there was a bit of an issue with regards to, we were proposing losing the temporary polling place, which was at Treble 6 Greenford Road, and we were recommending that those electors go to the Greenford Community Centre, and I think there's been some pushback. Well, there has been pushback on that, and I suppose that would be the area for discussion, I would suggest. I mean, we would have supported using the Salvation Army Hall, for example, which is on the other side of of MD, but that's unavailable, unfortunately. I think even a few councillors have helpfully tried to get in touch with the Sally Army, but they just have a nationwide blanket ban on the use of their halls for polling stations. So in regards to there is nowhere else, and we are trying to reduce these temporary polling stations. This one in particular is on a service road, which causes big issues, delivery problems, there's traffic orders, cars are parked that have to be towed away when this thing's delivered there, etc. We were proposing that it goes to the Greenford Community Centre, and it was only a quarter of a mile difference in the distance, and there were traffic lights at convenient points on the Greenford Road for voters to cross the road to go to the Greenford Community Centre. But I suppose you can see the comments in the appendix regarding central Greenford. So I don't know whether the panel wishes to discuss that first in relation to the ward.
Yeah, I think that is pretty much the only contentious matter in this ward. So I'll bring in Councillor Kelly, who represents that area.
No, I represent the Greenford Green ward. The majority of this new area actually now falls in the Greenford Broadway ward. So they're being asked two things. They've been asked to vote in a new ward, but they've also been asked to, the majority of them been asked to cross the Greenford Road into the Greenford Community Centre. Despite its title, it's not very well known, and often people who believe they're going to the Greenford Community Centre end up at Greenford Hall. So they might be coming into our office in Ross on the day. But the 666 Mark of the Beast temporary polling station has been there. Whilst it's a temporary polling station, it's been there in living memory. Now, I do understand the cost implications, and obviously getting it ready is something that I don't have a full understanding of, but it works. People vote there. I would imagine the turnout is fairly high there, and then to be asked to go to across the Greenford Road, I don't think is acceptable. Also, we do have evidence. The Cowgate Road was the part of Greenford Green that did go to Greenford Community Centre, and it was a real challenge to get people to cross the Greenford Road then. So to ask all of Costons Lane to cross the road and vote is, in my view, wholly unacceptable. All the other wards, absolutely. All the other polling districts, good work. We could look at, if we could find another venue for the Jamer Drive polling station, if they could explore. There's a scout hut up that way, so if we want to reduce costs, then maybe we can swap one of them around. But Greenford Community Centre was an excellent venue, is no longer in a good location for the polling district.
Does anybody else have any comments on this ward?
Just have to say, I'm also representing Greenford Green at the moment, representing some areas of this, and just like to support my colleague in everything he's said.
Ross, do you want to come back on some of the things Councillor Kelly mentioned?
Look, I think, barring any comments, but possibly from Helen, I think, I accept that. I think, these are the choices, and it's down to the panel, So, I mean, I am prepared to put that back. So we will create an additional polling district to what we've proposed here. So we would have an MF. We can rearrange it, and we'll.
I think Councillor Kelly's.
So, sorry, Ross, a bit of B here. It's less problematic for the people in Wordsworth Avenue, the upper part of Costons Lane, to cross over the Greenford Road. So I don't believe you would need to have another polling district. I just think you need to move the polling station. I don't want to incur more costs.
The only implication would be, I don't know how many voters would be in that area, but sorry, I haven't got the figures to hand, but that, you know, if with COVID implications, temporary polling places, you sometimes have to queue up only one person at a time. Is that something you're thinking about, Ross, when you're saying an extra?
So well, just so it can be clear. So the suggestion, Councillor Kelly, for MD is not split MD and create a temporary polling station on the right hand side, as it were, of Greenford. You say to replace the community centre, so get rid of the community centre, and for the whole of MD they go to that temporary polling place. Is that what the suggestion is?
Yes.
Right.
We have got to look, sorry, Chair, we have got to look at, I mean, temporary polling stations do have a lot of health and safety concerns. Hence, you wouldn't want to use them for a large electorate because of those. And that's another reason for wanting to get rid of them, frankly. But I'll hand over to Ross and Santok, I think.
So, I mean, we 30% of the electorate since the last elections are now postal voters. So the electorate issue at the polling stations has come down. For that district, if we were to get rid of Greenford Community Centre altogether, replace it with the temporary hut on stick 6, it would be electorate of total electorate of 2,800. So it would be around 1,800 going to the temporary station. Now, if we did have COVID, thanks for raising, Chair, if we were to have COVID, now COVID's not going to be around forever with the restrictions that we had in place in May, certainly. However, there is a strong possibility that for at least for May next year, and I think this applies to all temporary, whatever we agree tonight and whatever is agreed, in fact, in October, that they'll all have to come with some kind of caveat that come March, April next year, and there is a COVID situation, that we simply we won't be permitted to use temporary stations where the electorate, I think we had a line of around 1,000 at the last election, simply because it's not safe to do so, because it can only be one person in and one person out with social distancing measures. So obviously this is the big picture, this is going forward, happy to go with it, but as I say, it would come with a caveat that maybe in February, March, we'd have to have an emergency boundaries panel and replace some of these for May next year. So that's just picking up on the Chair's point. I don't know whether Santok has a view, but we would be happy, therefore, for the electors on the left-hand side, as it were, of MD and the Greenford Road to cross over to go to the temporary polling station, but not happy for the ones on the right to cross to go to the community centre.
I think is that there's more on the right. Is that
okay?
Right?
It's just that I don't buy into the narrative, and then this is from, it's anecdotal, but it's from experience of trying to get people to vote and to vote for me, as a case might be, is that the Greenford Community Centre is not a well-known venue. It's hard to get to. It's quite tight. It's quite restricted. The 666 is on the main road. The service road is quite, you can pull over there and vote. You can walk up there and vote. It's near the bus stops. It's near the Broadway. It will work, in my view, for both sides of the Greenford Road. And it's been very successful historically for the Costons Lane area of the current Greenford Broadway ward.
Before you come back, Ross, can I just have Councillor Conti's point?
Yeah, I was just wondering, where the current polling station is, where is it on that map? Is it in the sort of in the centre of the polling district, or is it? Because if it's just, because I wasn't sure if it's really, if it's completely down the other side, then I think that, I know you're saying it, you can't see any people travelling from left to right, the temporary polling station, left to right, but I think it's hard to say, it's unacceptable for one side of the road to cross the other side, but it's okay for the other people to cross the other way. I think if the temporary one is more central in the polling district, then yes, then that would make more sense.
I was just about to suggest that. Yeah, would you?
Yeah, Ross, can you enlarge it?
Hiya, Darren. Is it possible to go in and get to 666 Greenford Road, where our existing temporary is? So it's there, right? Okay. We can't dot that and zoom out? Oh, if you leave your cursor there. Oh.
With Shelley Avenue. No.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, it's just near Shelley Avenue.
Just above it.
So if we zoom out, so it's at the
far more.
Yeah, I mean, there's not actually a huge distance between those two stations, but of course, if you're coming from the south, they're both fairly north, and obviously the community centre is again further on. So, but it's certainly more central to the other one. But yeah. Hopefully everybody can see that.
And just to add to the point, you've got mature people in Cowgate Road. They just come to the top of Cowgate Road, turn left, and they're there. That's Cowgate Road is local authority housing. Turnout is historically low. They've had to cross over to Greenford Community Centre and haven't done so. Now I want them to have the opportunity to come out of Cowgate Road, turn left and walk 100 metres, which is what they should have been able to do historically. And now they're not getting that chance. I would like them to have that chance.
Okay, so the suggestion is that we retain the 666 temporary polling place, but with the proviso that Ross mentioned, that if we still have a dire COVID situation, we may have to call a special meeting and sort of suspend that and maybe other temporary polling stations.
Or I could do it under emergency powers, Chair, depending on the timeline.
We can add it to our resident dictator here, Helen. Are we all agreed on that? I'll take.
Yeah, thank you.
So just to be clear, Chair. So that's to replace the proposed use of the community centre with reintroduction of that temporary polling station at 666. Yeah.
Yes. Sorry, I didn't make that clear. Yes.
Okay. We'll make those amendments.
I'm mindful of the time now, so I'm going to slightly change the format, and we'll go through the wards, but I'm not going to ask you to sort of go into detail about them all unless anyone has any particular points on the panel. So next is Dormers Wells. Please indicate if you have any points. Otherwise, we will progress as if that's agreed. Understood, Ross?
Yeah, there were no. Yeah, understood. There were no comments received, certainly from the portfolio holder on this ward. It looked very straightforward and uncontroversial to me. But yeah.
Okay. Next up is Ealing Broadway, which I think has been similarly uncontroversial.
Just this is a broader point that covers a few wards. Some of the polling districts are huge compared to other wards, and I was just wondering because for example in Ealing Broadway, two of them have got over sort of 3,000, near 3,500 residents, whereas some other wards in Cleveland, for example, two of them have got like 800 residents and a polling station in each. It was just because obviously some, for example, HA, you've got a polling station in one end of the polling district in a huge polling district. I was just wondering how that decision was made in terms of the relative size of some of these polling districts and the number of polling stations in those wards, because there's a huge discrepancy, especially in some of the ones in central Ealing.
Sure, Kaz. So no one polling district, certainly in Ealing, which is a very diverse borough in terms of how it's laid out, how the roads run through it, the railway tracks, tubes, all kinds, lots of things come into play here. It also is often dependent. The size of the electorate is often dependent on the polling place available to meet that electorate. So there are many reasons for why they differ in sizes, and this very panel created polling districts 20 years ago, and some were very small. I mean, we used to have one that only had 140 electors in it, because it was in an alcove. I can't remember exactly where, but because it was surrounded by busy roads, it was deemed at that point it was suitable for its own polling district. So it does vary. Have I kind of gone some way to answer why that some places have huge electorates apart from others? It's obviously a lot more condensed in some areas as well. So Ealing Broadway is very built up. So the distance, although the electorate size would be higher, but the actual hectareage of the polling district would be the same as somewhere that possibly had a fraction of that elsewhere in the borough.
Just on that, HA hasn't lost a polling station. That's the same way as it was in previous elections, is it?
Yeah, it is the same polling station, polling place.
Yeah, I think it's the only thing in Ealing Broadway is obviously the town hall was one, which isn't anymore in the new proposal. Well, it is red. I'm not sure if it's not, but yeah, the town hall used to be one. I'm assuming it's because of the potential redevelopment that the town hall is no longer a polling station.
Correct.
Okay. Well, I mean, this is the suggestion, unless you have an alternative suggestion. But I'll take your general point. I mean, we have obviously one entirely new 2-member ward created in Southall because of we know that Southall Gasworks is going to have a lot of voters eventually. But yeah, Ealing Broadway has a lot of, buildings going up, and numbers will rise. But this is obviously only next year's election, and they can be re-examined in the future after that. But we're going to pass that one, I believe. I don't think anyone has any problems in specifically. Next up is Ealing Common. I think there have been issues raised, not by, there's nobody on the panel. Actually, sorry, what am I talking about? Councillor Ball, I'll bring you straight in.
Yeah, well, actually, I share the concerns that were raised by the portfolio holder in the document. So the proposal is to create a really enormous polling district on the west, the ED polling district, which combines essentially 2 current polling districts, and you end up with over 4,000 electors. And in particular, it includes the Village Park estate, which historically has had its own polling station. Was prior to the recent elections, it was a temporary polling place, and I understand the issues with those. But last time the Assyrian Temple was used, which is a great deal closer. It's the right side of the railway line from there. So it would seem sensible to retain 2 polling districts on the western side of the ward, and either have the temporary polling place or have the Assyrian Temple for the southern one, for the one for the estate. Yeah,
that certainly echoes some of the views we've heard from the portfolio holder. One point I wanted to ask Ross is we have in Appendix E a whole list of the cost per vote or per voter in each polling station. That was at the 2021 election. This temporary polling place in a Lilac Avenue wasn't used then. Do you have any figures for what it was in Council,
I did have a look. I know you requested this earlier this afternoon. in order to give it an accurate figure, it's not straightforward, and I didn't have the time to go to find the invoices for the charges for the staffing costs, and put that against the electorate turnout. But generally, as a marker, they cost, a temporary hut costs about 5 or 6 times more per vote than a fixed station. That's across the board. So we've got the GLA figures where there was an average of £30 plus per vote cost at a temporary station, compared to £6 per vote cost at a fixed station. It will be broadly the same as that.
Okay, I'm going to bring Councillor Conti in, but I just wanted to make the point that we have elsewhere, I think we'll come to Hanger Hill, where there's a particular temporary polling place there, which we're going to retain, which is basically previously cost £40 per voter. So, there is, while we are trying to reduce costs, we do realise, as Councillor Woodruff says, democracy costs money. And I think Councillor Ball, the point he makes is that we would be making it very difficult for people on the Trees estate, the south part of ED, to vote, or make it less desirable for them to vote. So,
Chair, if I may, I know, conscious of time, but just quickly in response to Councillor Ball's comments. I fully understand his comments. I mean, the proposed now ED, we were proposing, it's effectively a merger of the former EB and the former EC. Now, whilst that does on the list have an electorate of over 4,000, if you actually take into account the postal voters in that new polling district, which is now 1,600, which is quite significant, it would actually only lead to 2 average size polling stations of 1,350 each. So that's what we're looking at on these proposals. I did also hear that Councillor possibly mentioned the Assyrian, and there could be a hybrid, maybe a kind of halfway here, whereby, yes, we agree to not put it all in the polygon, but rather than have this expensive temporary polling station, which we've gone through all the reasons on temporary polling stations, there's a possibility that we could direct those electors to the Assyrian instead, albeit noting the Assyrian would be in a different ward with the new changes, but we could make arrangements there to make that okay. So we could make that Assyrian venue robust enough and secure enough to handle these electors coming from the other ward, and because we're recommending that as a polling station for the ward that it's also serving in these new proposals. I just to obviously put that out as another option that we could possibly get agreement on.
Okay, before I'm gonna Councillor Conti on that.
Yeah, my comments were just on the Assyrian Centre, because I thought obviously Ross just addressed that, it's being used as a polling station for Northfield. So if one polling station could be used for 2 wards, and it covers quite a relatively large polling district in Northfields as well. So I don't know in terms of the capacity whether that's practically possible. But if it is, then that may be a solution. I think the other thing is that, just sort of picking up what Ross said about when you take out the postal voters, I guess the thing is, yes, you take out the postal voters, but someone who's walking, from the most north point of that polling district who doesn't have a postal vote, and to the most southern point of that polling district, they're still very large. So it's not. I know I get about taking postal voters into consideration, but they're not uniformly spread out, and you're not. They are uniformly spread out. So you get people coming from, covering that whole large swathe. I guess the only thing is if we are. I hope we're talking about an additional polling station and not instead of, because what we don't want then is just one polling station in the southernmost corner that will definitely serve that southern portion, but then people up by West London University and north of that have an even longer walk than where it's being currently proposed.
Yeah, I'm going to ask Councillor Ball, do you see the Syrian church as a solution? Or
Yeah,
But yeah, Assyrian Centre, yes, I got it wrong when I said it to start with. Yeah, I think that would be a solution. That's was used at the last election. You know, there is a sort of natural divide of the railway line. So having that, the Assyrian Centre for a polling district that's to the south of the railway line, like the current EB polling district, and having the St Mary's Church polygon for the north of the railway line, like the current EC. Yeah, I mean, I think that does make sense, and it avoids the COVID concerns about having temporary polling place with quite a large electorate.
Okay, I'm going to ask if the panel is happy with that solution. Okay, so Ross, are you clear on what is being agreed?
Yes, very clear. So we'll reinstate there another polling district, but we'll send them to the Assyrian, which is in the other ward. But I'll make it very clear in the report.
Okay, thanks. Moving on now to East Acton. I don't believe it's had any. I mean, it's had some changes made to it. I think a removal of a temporary polling station at Wesley, if I'm thinking right. Councillor Conti.
I have to say, I don't particularly know this area particularly well, but just looking at the map, I think it's the most, I know that the final letter is cut out, so I don't know what the second letter is there, but that is absolutely tiny. Is there no way that a polling station could serve AC and here, but somewhere more central? It just seems, you know, we're talking about costs, and we're adding more and more polling stations in as we seem to be going along this evening. But it just seems that, you know, could we not? Is there not a more practical solution for here? When you look at it, it just seems a little bit silly to serve literally a couple of roads.
I think you'll find that is an area with some tower blocks, but Ross, do you want to clarify?
Santok might be actually better placed, but AD has got a smallish electorate, 935, and if the proposal is to merge that with AE or AC next door, that's the King Fahd, that can certainly take them. But I think the reason why that is there is that's quite a considered community area. Santok, would you like to add into that at all? Do you have any comments on AC?
Yeah, it's
AD, sorry, Acton Vale. Yeah.
Yeah, it's that is a very enclosed area. It's a council estate, and that is why we left it like that, because I think the electorate is different there from the neighboring one. So we've got no objection to merging it, but I think we left it like that for that reason. It is blocks of flats. It is kind of a nest of its own.
Hold on a second. I'm just going to.
Can I expand on that?
Yeah, sorry. Yeah,
I mean,
you do that while I look at the.
It's the Vale estate. It's a very underprivileged part of the borough, of the ward. To take away their polling station would not, in my view, be acceptable. I'm sure it wouldn't be acceptable to the portfolio holder, and the likelihood of them going up to the King Fahd Academy is quite small, I should say. So I would, although I can see starkly the geographical area is small, we have to, in my view, keep the polling station there.
Sorry, that's a good point. I was trying to find a figure for the cost per vote, but at the previous election, I think it must be quite low though. I can't find it in my Acton Vale Community Centre. Is that right?
That's correct.
Correct. Yeah.
It is. Yeah. Chair, sorry, just to jump in.
Voters, only £8 per vote. Sorry, Santosh, I'll cut you off.
No, that's okay. That's fine.
Okay, so I think the point is that although it is quite a small area, it's not a particularly expensive polling station, It's not a temporary polling station, and it is a distinct, area with a sort of demographic that may not vote if it may reduce its vote if you took it away. So we're gonna stick with that. On to the next one, which is Greenford Broadway. We have had some comments about this. Ross, do you want to give a little bit of an overview of this one? Ross, are you there?
Sorry. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Right. I think the comments we received on Greenford Broadway, happy to be corrected, were more to do with Central Greenford, which we've covered, which was the first ward we looked at. Oh no, we did have something on ND, didn't we? Sorry, I'm talking to myself, but Linton, so we had a feedback that it wasn't satisfactory. Use of the Greenford Library polling station.
Yes, I think actually I remember this from a meeting we had. I think this was a view to express, but I think in my I'm living that ward now, and anecdotally it would seem that quite a lot of people would know where the library is and be able to get to the library, and there's even a bus that takes you along the E10, could take them virtually right up to the library. So I'm not sure about that. Could you just come back on the point about the temporary polling station in Victor Grove, removing that?
Yeah, Santok, could you come in on this one? Is that okay? I think
that's
yeah.
Is it not a different in Victor Grove? Oh, sorry.
So we're on the new Greenford Broadway, the ends.
Yeah. Right, let me look.
I think it's NF, is it?
So it was the M's, I think, in Old Money, Santok.
Sorry, the existing MF, do you mean? No. MK maybe.
Just to make it clear, I mean, that this is because a substantial chunk of Greenford Broadway has moved into the new Central Greenford, so it's a sort of whole new new ball game, really.
Correct. It's been hacked effectively, and it's now doesn't resemble, hardly resembles what it did before. But I'm just trying to.
I think the point we made previously was that I think it's NF, and it's the bit below the Ruislip Road where they will now have to cross the road to vote. But there are traffic lights. I mean, crossing places, it's not the end of the world, I think.
I mean, just like my understanding is quite right. Invicta Grove was there on the Ruislip Road, just off it. That's now gone. So somebody will now have to cross the Ruislip Road and go through Rectory Park. So that's what's lost. So Invicta Grove, in a sense, lose their natural common place that they voted historically.
Are we happy with that, or do we want to keep the status quo? Or?
Yeah, I think just from me, I think we struggled with this one because we were questioning the inconvenience that was raised on this. So we've actually put in there recommending 6 polling places for that ward, and they're all gettable. So and they're all they're all good polling places. Yeah, but over to the panel. I mean, I'm happy to move on and leave it as it is.
All somewhat smaller than some of the Hanger Hill ones, I have to say, Chair.
Yeah.
Just as the point I was making before, as long as people are sort of aware that things have changed, and because believe it or not, lots of people don't follow these negotiations and don't find out that's happened until the actual election turns up. I know that's amazing, but that's what happened.
It's obviously not a party political point, but the ward councillors or anyone canvassing and the run up to the election might want to just remind people where their polling station will be. It's quite a natural thing to do.
I just think on that point, if it's any consolation, we had the most changes I've ever seen prior to an election at the last election because of COVID. I think it was 11 changes we made prior to the GLA one. And I did not receive any complaints from a single elector about them being confused where to go. And also, just to add, we had the highest turnout in all of London for those elections and those by-elections. So, yeah, just important point to make there. I think that we had the highest turnouts. I mean, the postal votes helped, of course. A third of our electorate on postal votes, but the turnout was huge for us in Ealing. So it didn't harm the process at all, from what I could see, with that many changes. And the poll cards obviously worked with the information we put on them for those changes. So I just thought I'd mention that. It's worth mentioning. So peace of mind that we have made significant changes in the past. I.e. the last one, it didn't appear to make be a problem.
Okay, so we're gonna stick with it as you propose. The next one is Hanger Hill, which don't think we have any problems with. I've mentioned the St. Augustine's Avenue, but it's a very distinct area. I think it's virtually Alperton. It's north of the Hanger Lane, and you'd have to go right under the subway to get to any other polling place. So we'll keep that. Next up after that is the newly named Hanwell Broadway, which is, I believe, what used to be Elthorn. Yes. Councillor Kelly.
Ross, Oakland's school has been a polling station probably when the old king was alive. Can you confirm that you can still access Oakland School on a polling day from the bottom of Dean's Road? And if so, why not? Because otherwise, a person, the priest in Hanwell, St. Joseph's, will have to walk. The people living around there will have quite a significant walk to get to Oakland's Road. Councillor Conti suggests that isn't open. And could it be opened? It's at the end of the other side of the playground at the bottom of Dean's Road.
Right. Santok, are you aware of this issue or potential issue?
The school actually has two entrances. So one is where the cursor is, and the other one is on from the main road, which is Auckland Road. So yes, it does have actually two entrances. So the people from Dean's Road can access the polling station from the back, where the cursor is.
I have to say that that's my polling station. They don't open the one on the Dean's Road, so you have to walk all the way around. That's not, I personally don't have an issue with doing that walk, but I know lots of elderly people probably do. And there is a gate, so I don't understand why. And I think historically it used to be open, but the last few elections it hasn't.
Right, okay. I was under the impression that it's always open, but we can actually ask the school to make sure it's open on election day. As far as I know, it has been open in the past, but as you say, it wasn't the last election. We can make a point of that. to ensure that is open?
That would be helpful. I don't know whether if we're in a COVID situation, you'll need a sort of one way in and one way out. But
It's a big, it's the other end of the playground. So it's not, you know, the building is there on Oaklands Road, and there's a playground that goes across, and it just so happens the playground ends at Oaklands Road, and it's like a fire exit more than anything. I don't know whether it's got disabled access though, but there is a gate there, and if that gate's open, the people at the Uxbridge Road side of Hanwell Broadway will find it much easier to come and vote. It's about 50-50 for Fabio.
So if we can, we'll take that back to the caretaker there. I mean, of course, there could be a reason why beyond our control that they've suddenly started shutting that, security reasons or whatever. But we'll certainly go back to try and get that reopened. And yeah.
Thank you.
yeah, if you can just report back for the next meeting.
Sure.
Right, sorry. Yes, now we're on to Lady Margaret Road. I think there was a little bit of feedback, mainly about the SA district to the top, which has a polling district at Saffron. But Councillor Rice, you wanted to come in on that.
Thank you, Chair. Because it mentions being a banqueting hall, I know this is going to be an issue that's going to come up probably for potentially a number of venues that we could choose as polling stations. But as there's likely to be consumption of alcohol there, I mean, hopefully that's going to be clear to voters that they're not going to have to actually see alcohol there, because I know that can obviously be a deterrent for you to visit a polling station if you believe so. But I'm assuming that kind of thing has been taken into consideration already.
I think we've had it. It was used in the last election, wasn't it?
Yes, yeah, so just interested. Thank
you. Ross, can you confirm?
Yeah, correct. You're correct. Albeit it was for obviously for different wards with these changes. But yeah, we've used it for a number of years now, Saffron Door. As with all our venues, obviously we use a couple of golf clubs. All alcohol is hidden away. It's either taken away or it's hidden, so you wouldn't know it's there. So it is on our assessments, and it is a requirement. Wherever we use anywhere, there shouldn't be any alcohol in view for electors coming in to vote and departing. So that is taken on board, yeah.
Yeah, there's no visible signs of alcohol being served or actually just even visible at that polling place.
Councillor Kelly.
Ironically, the Saffron Dior doesn't serve alcohol. It's a venue predominantly used by faith group that don't drink alcohol. So that place in particular, anyone would have concerns going there would probably know that place wouldn't have it anyway.
You're speaking as a chair of the licensing committee, who would obviously know whether.
No, I know. I've been there, I've been invited there by mosques, so that's how I know it. And they don't have alcohol there. It used to be a pub, but hasn't been a pub for a generation.
Okay, that
Thank
seems
you,
to.
Kelly, because it might just be a point for other places as well. We just need to. Yeah.
Okay, so that's why Saffron Door, is it, has been used. It looks like a strange. That SA looks a bit of a strange district. It includes Verulam Road, but I believe, it's not particularly long walk, I believe. Anyway, so we're gonna take Lady Margaret as read and move on to North Acton. Councillor Rice again.
Thank you, Chair. Because there's been a comment there about the possibility of there being HS2 works creating some kind of obstruction. So I just wondered if we'd actually looked into at what stage the works would be in progress, because I can actually understand how that could be an issue for people, because especially if there are a lot of put vehicles around, maybe a lot of trucks removing earth, for example. These are the kind of things that go on which could make people feel unsafe about maybe walking in a particular place and having to walk across a particular road. Thank you.
Ross, I think we've discussed that before, but do you want to explain what we know about that?
With regards to the HS2, I mean, clearly it's going to be a lot of works, but these changes we are making are long term. I mean, the works will come and go. Now, I think what we're proposing is the moving of the loss of Wesley playing fields to Midland, which is about a half a mile walk. Santok, I don't know whether you want to come in on this one. Albeit I was just going to report we only had 120 voters who actually voted in person at the Wesley playing fields at the last election at the GLA, and that was where we had a high turnout, 49% plus. Santok, do you want to come in on that?
Yeah, most of that polling district is commercial, so it's only several roads, 2 or 3 roads just there where people live. So it's not the proposed one polling place is not that far, half a mile distance, and within walking. Most of the population is actually near polling station on Midland Terrace. So it's only a small number of voters who have to walk that distance.
This is, I think, the Wesley Fields temporary polling station is one of the most expensive, like, because of that small number of voters. It's like £44 or something per voter, so it's quite hard to justify. I think it's also been vandalised in the past, on the night before elections, so it's not an ideal.
Correct. It's been vandalised a number of times, actually. I think one time we woke up on polling morning, or the presiding officer got there at 5:30 in the morning and found it on the opposite end of the field. So we had to get a few cars in there to tow it. No, but it is, it costs. It's very high. I think the costs that we show, I think Helen did allude to this at the beginning of this meeting, that the costs that are shown on there don't actually also include, there's other costs that you don't see, the staffing costs, the positioning of it costs, the security costs, there's insurance costs, there's all kinds of costs around these temporary huts. That one particularly on Wesley playing fields is, certainly in my time at Ealing, have been vandalised a number of times. And as I say, it's got such a small electorate to it. I think what we were going to propose, I think we had this discussion, Chair, if the panel were to agree to merge this with the temporary hut that's at Midland, we would write to those electors and try and push them again to see if they'd like to have a postal vote to avoid that extra half a mile walk. If that's okay with the panel, but yeah.
I think that should be the general case. In any area where we're getting rid of temporary polling places, we should write to the residents to make them aware of that. If that's, yeah. Okay, so I think we're taking North Acton as read and moving on to North Greenford, where there's a particular issue with the golf club being used in ID.
So if you don't mind me coming in, I think that the proposal is for this from all 3 councillors. From the portfolio holder, but he did, I believe, as I understand, liaise with the councillors that we actually remove the golf club. So as we have it here, we've got IC and ID. I think that the proposal is, which is great, that we actually lose the golf club, which reduces a polling station, and those electors go to the temporary hut at IC. Now, obviously, we prefer the other way around, that they lose the temporary hut at IC and the voters go to the golf club at ID, but we can understand the difficulty there for quite a lot of voters in that area to go all the way up or all the way down, as it were, to the southern end of ID to vote. So whereas IC is central. So on this one, you know, subject to what this panel said, I'm quite happy to lose ID, the golf club, and send all the electors to that existing temporary hut at IC. But over to you.
Councillor Rice again.
Or the panel.
Thank you, Chair. I think I would like to back up the comments that are here in the report, because that is actually where I live. And so I lived across the road from where the temporary polling station is. Now, what I can tell you about the golf club is that, as well as being dark, if it was actually end up being used, you know, even in a May election, I can imagine by the time it gets nearer to 10 o'clock at night, it will be quite dark. And you are talking about, there aren't really proper pavements around there. You'll be talking about walking within mud, just within a very difficult to walk across. It'd be very precarious, I think, for a lot of people to have to use. So I would actually prefer it if it was actually, if those voters there were using the temporary polling station. There is a very big main road there, as you can see on the map. However, you're very close to a good crossing there. And so it would be very easy for people to cross that road if they needed to. I feel like people would be perfectly safe walking across that road on Whitton Avenue East and getting to the temporary polling station. Darn sight safe than using the golf club. Even though it just sounds like a lovely venue, it really is quite difficult. Thank you.
Councillor Kelly.
I just sort of want to make an observation. Really, temporary polling stations were placed where they were placed some time ago, and it seems like they were well thought out. And that's why we chose these places. That they are temporary polling stations, but they seem to be permanently useful. That's just something I'm taken away from today's discussions.
Councillor Conti.
Not an objection to having the temporary polling station, but if you're merging those two polling districts, that's over 2,500 people. So can that temporary polling station manage that number of electors? So I'm just thinking about what they look like. Yep. I know the one that used to be North, or is in North Hills in WA, or the one that's in Hanger Hill, they're quite small. So yep. It's just in terms of practicalities of merging, sort of having 2,500 people going to vote in one of those.
Yeah, no, it's a good point. But the 2,500 taken in of course now our postal voters, so you can chop off between 800 and 900 of those. So yeah, we at that particular place there, Santok, you may want to come in. I think it's the water board. We put a large polling station there, temporary there. But I think whilst you raise that, with COVID, which is again the health warning to all our temporary huts, with COVID, then we can't function those. In a normal election with no COVID, we can have 2 or 3 people in those stations quite easily. We put our best staff in them as well, and churn out the votes. But with COVID, it's just not possible. We need the social distancing, 1 in, 1 out, everything else. If there's a query, huge queues. We can't. If we were in a position where we were like last May, I'm not saying we're going to be next May, but if we have any temporary huts over 1,000 electors, even with the postal votes, we will need to reconvene boundaries and find alternatives, whatever they may be. And in places like this, where it's very difficult to find an alternative, which is why we have this temporary hut on this road here, as Councillor Kelly says, they're useful because there isn't anywhere else. We will possibly need to revert to a plan B, which could be, you know, dare I say, the golf club or something else, and we'd have to put a myriad of measures in to ensure that it's not muddy and it's well lit and it's well signposted and people feel safe, and we put security guards in. But as I say, I think going forward, the suggestion that this is merged, we lose a polling station and we merge it with IC in normal times, business as usual, that's very much doable there at IC, handling what would effect be 1,500 to 1,600 electorate. Based on the turnout, which will be low, maybe I haven't explained this, because we've got 1/3 of the electorate are now postal voters. It's 30% of just over 30% of the population. A normal turnout's only 40%. So what you're left with, the electorate you're left with, 70% electorate you're left with, there's even less a chance that they're going to come out and vote. So the turnout is always going to be even lower than you would think it would be. Hope I've explained that.
Yeah, just the figures from this year's election, 382 at the temporary polling place there, 271 at the golf club. So but there are manageable numbers, but I hear what you say about COVID, and we might have to completely rethink that if we get another decimation. So that is the panel's recommendation, that we should do away with the golf club and move to the temporary polling place for both ID and IC.
Right.
Okay. Next on the next up is North Hanwell, which I believe there hasn't been any comments on. Formerly Hebane, yes, indeed. Northfield, do we have any comments on that?
Nothing, maybe nothing serious, but myself and Councillor Conti was a councillor there, and I was a councillor there. When I was there, it's obviously changed its letters. It was W's, and it had WA, WB, WD, and WE. There was never a WC polling district, which has now moved to Southall Green, where there is one. Walpole had V's. There was never a VD polling district in Walpole either, which I noticed we've now got one. I'm not going to make. I'm not going to make a proposal, but I think for reasons at some point they made a decision not to have those letters. But I noticed we've restored those rather amusing polling districts.
I think, yes, Councillor, sorry, Ross again. I think in the past it was a historic, a different generational decision that WC wasn't acceptable, and neither was VD. I think we just took the choice because it did confuse people having the jump and not having a WC and not having a, where there were gaps in the letterings. But I think rewinding all the way back to the very beginning of this meeting, I don't think that will now matter, because we're going to move these letters on along the alphabet. So for this one, we'll be starting at VE or VF, and so I don't think that will have any bearing now.
And there's no.
That makes sense. Sorry.
No STD polling district, hopefully. Councillor Conti.
Thank you. My only query on this was the VA polling district. So that's now currently, well, it's made up of WD, WE, and then UE from Elthorn, or part of it. So it's quite a. If you live on Southdown Avenue, which is now in Elthorn, and have to walk to essentially almost, well, Northcroft Road, close to Northfields Avenue, it is a long walk. And I'm just a little bit concerned about the size of that polling district and the placement. Now, if I can understand why you've placed it there, because it's essentially residential throughout and it's very difficult to find an alternative venue. But I wonder whether the polling district that's currently serves UE in Elthorn, which is the St. Thomas's Church Hall on Boston Road, whether that could serve a function, because I just think that I don't think having that single polling district all the way on that side really serves. And I know from experience knocking on doors on election day in that part of the world, that, you're going down, on that side of Boston Road, people, would be very reluctant potentially to walk all the way up there. And I think that the people who live in the Elthorn part of what's going to become that polling district may feel quite disenfranchised, that essentially having to walk all the way into Northfields to actually vote.
Ross?
I'm not sure I agree. I mean, I think this panel has the power to have it that an elector shouldn't have to walk more than 30 seconds to a polling station or 3 minutes. I mean, it's really within the remit of the panel, but I think we need to be reasonable. I would suggest we need to be reasonable, creating more polling places. We've got the postal vote a lot of postal voters. It's on demand. People can vote by post. For me, looking at that, that's not such a. It's a great station. There's plenty of car parking if people didn't decide they didn't want to walk and wanted to drive. It's accessible. It's got all the amenities. Everybody knows where it is. Presumably, people in that area take their kids to school there. So, I mean, I'm happy for the panel to comment, but for me, that looks, I would say, within the realms of being reasonable. It can certainly handle the electorate as well. That venue, it can handle it's got an electorate of over 4,000. But again, you apply this postal voting mathematics to it. It's under. It's probably around 2,500.
That was actually to make that, if it's most of the people in that area walk, if they can walk their kids to school there, they can probably walk the same distance to vote there. Also, is it quite a flat area? It's not particularly going up.
It is flat. Yeah. Otherwise, the driving there would have added probably 45 minutes to get to the polling station. But that's a different point. It is flat. And I'm less worried about, younger people who walk their kids to school. I'm just thinking, I know, for example, on Southdown Avenue, there's quite a lot of elderly residents who live there. And granted, some of them, a proportion of those may have postal votes. It's just, we were quibbling earlier about someone crossing the road to go and vote. And, walking from Southdown Avenue up to where the polling station is, I would say, for a slow walker, could be potentially up to 15 to 20 minutes. It's, it will take them quite a while. Well, I know this is going to consultation, so there'll be an opportunity for people, to get their views. I just think this one just seemed quite a large distance, but, if the panel obviously feel that isn't the case, that's fine. But I just wanted to express my thoughts on that.
I just on that. I mean, when we talk about consultation, do we talk to? They're not called age concern anymore. The groups representing the elderly or disabled people.
I think where we can, we'll involve every organisation that is relevant that we know of contact with. Whether it's the talking newspapers, the local disability groups, the communities in the areas, that whoever we can, we will obviously and obviously as councillors, we'll also, of course, have to have more contacts than we'll have. And please, yourselves or the councillors in those wards, be very free to forward on the consultation report and to encourage feedback in. The more feedback we get, the better. But it will go out to as many groups, disability groups, and to answer that question, yes, it would end up with those groups being made aware of it anyway. Yeah.
I'm conscious of the time. We're only about 2/3 of the way through, but Councillor Woodruff.
I just briefly want. I don't have a huge issue about, but what I do know is that this area. I'm presuming you're going to send them to residents association. There's a very strong residents association in this area who they feel that. I'm sure they'll make it known. Boston Manor Residents Association is a highly articulate, strong residents association.
Well, let's put it this way. We're going to look forward to the consultation, and we may have to change this later in the year if we get huge negative feedback. But at the moment, we're going to leave it as is. I'm going to move on to the next ward, which I should declare an interest as my ward, North Not Mandeville. Yes, Councillor.
Yes, I will declare that I am a councillor, also with Councillor Summers at North Not Mandeville. So really, we're talking about here the loss of a temporary polling station and the requirement for people to have to walk from the wireless estate onto the racecourse estate in order to vote instead. Now, it doesn't actually look on there like a particularly long walk, but it's actually quite deceptive, the actual journey that you have to make across those main roads there, across the Wood End Lane and across Petts Hill, and especially at particular points, because there's a lot of housing in the way, so you will probably have to make some kind of detour to get around there potentially. So it does actually just seem a little bit unfair to put people at disadvantage, people who perhaps live in a more deprived area of the wireless estate, in order to insist that they make that particular walk. This is difficult when you're talking about trying to save the temporary polling stations. I do fully understand the issues here. I can understand the fact that we're trying to save money, and I want, probably would like to explore why it is that we particularly having to think about saving money this time round when maybe we haven't on previous occasions. And I am very much aware of the fact that, especially reading through the report and looking at the issues, that temporary polling stations are not particularly pleasant places to be working at, and so it is a shame. And I wish I had an answer to that, but if there was some way of finding a way to make it more pleasant for the people who have to work there, then that'd be fantastic. But so I just really do feel like it would be far better for the people who are there, living there, not to be in some way disadvantaged by feeling somehow put off from making that walk across. Thank you.
Yeah, Ross, do you want to come back on that? Sorry, Helen as well.
Yeah.
Sorry, Ross, if I could just make a point. Just on temporary polling stations, I know Councillor Kelly made the point, and Councillor Rice as well. There is no, in relation to temporary polling stations, yes, they are extremely expensive, but that is not the reason, that is not the prime reason why officers generally push against them. Much more significant issues are the health and safety concerns that they bring. They are really horrible places to work. And COVID hasn't made that any better. They're not safe environment, as safe as we would like. Obviously, they always meet minimum standards, and that was one of the reasons for that requirement, is why we had to take quite a lot out at the last polling event back in May, because with COVID, many of them simply could not be made safe. But there are a lot of other factors that lie behind it, and on top of the costs that you see there as well, there are an awful lot of staffing costs to get them right. We appreciate that democracy costs, but there are other concerns. So I wouldn't want you to think that that's it's officers just wanting to penny pinch. They would always be, as far as officers are concerned, an absolute last resort because of primarily those health and safety concerns.
And if I may just add that it is also difficult for us to recruit staff to work in temporary polling stations. I don't know one person who actually would choose one to work at. We have to sort of twist arms for people to work there.
The majority of people don't agree to do it more than once.
Correct.
Yeah, I'm in a difficult position as chair and also a Northumberland councillor. I mean, I do believe that taking this away would probably damage our turnout. It had 229 voters at the last election, which turns out £28 per voter. But like Helen said, cost is not the only consideration. And I do know that. I mean, I remember herding people to vote at almost 10 o'clock at that particular polling place. And yeah, I can't imagine it's not a very nice place to work. Is nowhere near any shops or anywhere you could sort of have a lunch break. It's I think they have presumably portaloos or
they are very unpopular, the portaloos.
Which of course Ross, which of course get tipped up the night before as well. So the security costs on those. So they are, I mean, you've got the temporary huts are, and I mean, we had the winter poll, which wasn't that long ago, seems miles away now, with the Snap UK Parliamentary, which was in December. And I think if you recall, those of you that were out on polling day as tellers or agents or whatever, we had to bring in generators. First time ever, for each and every temporary place had a generator with some poor guy going around with cans of fuel filling it up, and health and safety officers there all day for 16 hours. And these things should be I mean, I can understand, and I absolutely support Councillor Kelly's remarks earlier that these are very useful things, and they are, but they should be a last resort. And I think, you know, this is one of those examples for me personally as an officer where it's not, I wouldn't classify it as essential when you have what would be less than a 5-minute walk, although albeit, you know, it's not a straight line walk. Should we really be considering putting a temporary station there when we have that option? And we also, of course, have now got these postal votes, 85,000 new ones. We can certainly write out to everybody on the estate again and pick more up. But, you know, it's for the panel to call it. Helen's mentioned about money, and it's also come up about democracy costs, but we now have 85,000 postal votes. They each cost £4.09. And of course, it still looks like we're keeping roughly the same amount of polling stations. Well, we are, so those costs aren't changing. But in addition, now we've got 85,000 times £4.09. So the money just isn't there. And I know it's shouldn't be about cost, but I think it all factors in and hopefully helps in your decision-making process. But yeah, sorry, I'll be quiet now. And yeah.
Okay, I don't really know how to take this. Do we want to vote on this one, or does anybody have any, apart from Councillor Rice, who's very much against it, does anybody else have any strong views either way?
Strong's maybe a strong word for it, but I just think that I sort of see what Ross is saying to an extent, that we've massively increased number, and I don't know in particular in this ward or in this polling district how many additional people have signed up for postal votes. So, you know, it's more of a broad statement. But if we've got 30% of the electorate, it just seems, you know, by increasing the number of pollings, you know, if we're talking about adding another polling station in, or replacing the one that, you know, putting back the temporary polling station that was there and having this new one, it just seems like an additional. So we're saying having this one and putting the previous one that was there back in. Is that what we're saying?
Oh, right. That was the was the suggestion.
Yeah. So essentially, we're going to have 2 polling stations instead of one that was currently serving that area. Is that what we're? No.
The Pets Hill one already serves the racecourse.
Oh, right. So right. Okay. So we're just getting rid of one. It's on this proposal. Right. Okay.
That little sort of square bit is being asked to sort of vote with the others.
It just all seems very close. I know, you know, we're talking about, you know, I know we're talking about a different sort of group of, you know, or demographic of voters potentially, but, you know, we're talking about Northall's, people can walk 15 or 20 minutes to a polling station. I think we said this one is, you know, it's probably not going to be as far as that. I just think that
it's difficult because, again, using your sort of slow-moving elderly voter, I think it from the corner of Lancaster Road, you're going up a hill, then you go down, you're going up. It probably could well be a 20-minute walk for somebody like that.
The existing polling place is at one end of that square, just there where the cursor is. So it's not a long distance to walk up to the permanent polling station.
That is a good point.
I think it's just fair for me to say that this Northolt Mandeville Wireless Racecourse Estate appears to be similar in nature to the one in Central Greenford. So I think, you know, interest and fairness, I would support retaining the one in the wireless estate. You know, consultation in Northolt Mandeville and Central Greenford may not have the same volume of responses than a consultation in other wards.
Can I just come back? Could we not, because obviously we're going to come back and have another meeting in October, so could we not see what the feedback from the consultation is and then potentially make a decision about the, you know, because tonight it's not a final say, we're not making a final decision, are we, on which polling state, on where exactly the polling stations are. So could we not, once we've had some feedback more broadly from the consultation, could that not then help inform us in terms of whether we want to reinstate the one that's been proposed to be removed?
Yeah, exactly. We are making a decision tonight, but it's not an unchangeable decision. It you know, if there is consultation, we could row back or change.
So, Chair, yes, I think that I might be about to make the same point as Councillor Conti said, just suggested that maybe if the panel agrees that maybe we go out to consultation on the proposal as shown in the papers, but yeah, the panel carries forward this thought process and sees what you know, if there is massive pushback.
Sorry, Chair, but we've agreed on a process for Central Greenfield already and other places already. We don't want, we've decided on that, so we need to be consistent. Or each one. So, like Northolt Mandeville, are we retaining the wireless forward, and then it goes out for consultation? And for example, with Northfields, I believe the decision was that we don't include St Thomas's, and it will go out for consultation. We've gone through each one and decided, not on each ward.
Helen.
So, Chair, yes, obviously it's for the panel to decide what to go out with, but I think my feeling is if you go out to consultation on the basis of an additional polling station, you're not going to get many people saying, or any people saying, no, please, we don't need that polling station. I think if you want to receive that feedback, you have to go out on the basis of taking out the polling place rather than leaving it in. That would be I don't think anyone other than Ross Santock and myself would actually come back and say, no, take it out.
Yeah, I'm going to let Councillor Rice come back in, but just I take the point Councillor Kelly is trying to get consistency, that you know we're consistent with all our decisions. I think, but it is a sort of case by case. The numbers are slightly different. I think we're going to come to Perivale in a minute, which is going to have a similar issue, but I think the numbers there are bigger. But Councillor Rice.
Thank you, Chair. I suppose just really for me, when it comes to the consultation, how that's going to work, how we're going to ensure that people are really fully aware of what they're being asked. Are people really going to understand the implications of it? Are people going to understand just how important it's going to be to them? Because once you've just started on that slope, we just really want to make sure that the estate just feels valued in itself, and they just really need to understand that that a facility is being taken away from them when we could have perhaps thought about other ways of making it more pleasant, maybe, for example, for the people who are working there. But people do need to understand, and I would need clarity is if we were going to leave it to the consultation, is exactly how the people are going to be asked the question and how it's going to be really illustrated to them exactly what it is that they're voting for. Thank you. Okay.
I think we might have to go to a vote on this one, which not necessarily a recorded vote, but unless anyone demands that, but I'm going to ask people whether they're in favour of retaining the Blenheim Road temporary polling place or not. So I'm going to go round, not by alphabetical, but by ladies first, and to the right as well. So, oh, sorry, show of hands would be simpler, wouldn't it? Especially for those. Yes, indeed. I won't forget Councillor Sabiers. Hey, that's right. You can't.
So I can't vote. Sorry, much as I'd be inclined in a certain direction, but I obviously won't say anything.
Yes, I haven't heard a negative opinion on yes yet, but anyway, to the vote. Those in favour of retaining the Blenheim Road polling place. Those against? No, he's an observer. Okay, I don't need to use a casting vote. That is agreed. We're going to put out for consultation retaining the Blenheim Road temporary polling place. We're going to have to speed up a bit. Next on the list.
Okay, so just to clarify, Councillor, sorry, I know you're moving along. We'll put that back in, okay?
Yes.
So we put that back in on the maps and the report and stuff. So that goes back. Okay, you got that, Santop, noted?
Yes.
I don't know what we can maybe think of any ideas for improving the working conditions there.
It's an issue across all our temporary polling places, and we have done. All I can say is we couldn't do it anymore. It's not. Yeah.
No.
Yeah, I think if you compared us with the average polling station in the UK, I don't know whether you've seen pictures. I mean, some people use caravans and things like that. Believe it, I mean, ours are luxury, but they're still not. They're still not ideal, and certainly not for a 16-hour working day. But yeah, democracy is important, and that's why we have them and everything else. So we do the best we can with the DDA compliance and everything else. But yeah. Fine, that's back in. So, all right.
Thank you. I think the next couple of wards, there's a totally uncontroversial Northolt West End. No comments on that. Norwood Green. Don't think there's anything on that one. So they're through on the nod. But then we get to Perivale, and there is a bone of contention here. Where I think the comments are made on page 48 from the portfolio holder. They are particularly about, I believe it's JB, and the removal of a temporary polling place at Lee Road. Again, you probably haven't been able to get these figures, Ross, but do you have any figures for the cost of that per voter at the last election was used, 2018?
No, as I said, it's a while to crunch these figures. It took us a good few days to get all the invoices together for the 2021. So no is the answer to that. But they will be in the same ballpark, 5 or 6 times more expensive than a fixed.
I believe there's 1,586 voters in that polling district, is that right? A polling district that has been removed, maybe just the one that used to serve by Lee Road. Sorry, there's a question from Councillor Sabia.
That relates to the previous discussion. It's just for if the officers can take that away for the next meeting, that'd be great.
Okay, great. Yeah, sorry.
I think they went to St Nicholas for the GLA due to COVID, and the turnout there was similar to the old JE. So arguably, it didn't affect the turnouts at the GLA. With that going, I think the other option that doesn't appear on any of these reports, if there is a strong feeling not to reverse this, is Perivale Primary School. Now that could be an option that would allow both existing JD and JE to go into Perivale Primary, but it would mean the shutting down of the primary school for the day. But that is another option that doesn't appear on here. Santok, I don't know whether you want to come in on this, because you and I have had in-depth discussions, haven't we, about this?
Yeah, when St. Nicholas was being rebuilt, we actually used Perivale Primary School as a polling place. So we have used Perivale Primary School as a polling place before.
Okay, I mean, it's not a great deal of, it's not a great improvement geographically. It's not only a small distance further north.
What these maps don't represent is one-way systems and what I call existing LTNs. You know, they very much exist on Wadsworth Road. So it's quite a challenge to get into St. Nicholas Church. I defy anyone in this room to drive there now and find it first time. Maybe Tarek Mahmood could, Councillor Mahmood, but they are a challenge for people to get to by car, as where a primary school is by its very nature much better known. Unfortunately, places of worship aren't. So I would suggest that we look at that much closely, going back to Perivale School.
Councillor Conti and then Councillor Rice.
I was going to say, if that at the GLA election this was used and the turnout was good, then don't we have a sort of a evidence to suggest that the use of this polling station, which has just been used in May, didn't affect the turnout? And therefore, you know, rather than stopping children going to school for one day, if this, you know, granted, if we hadn't had this experiment, which was the GLA election, we could say, everything that Councillor Kelly has just said, but given the turnout wasn't affected, then I can't really see what the objection is of using this as a polling station.
Thank you, Chair. I think it is a fair distance to expect people to have to travel, I mean the other factors that come in on that as well. Yeah, just the fact that when you've got the GLA election, you've got it's a big headline election. It's for the mayor, and so it's something that's maybe more like to pull people out. I mean, I have actually seen this polling station in action, even on a dark evening, and there have been long queues outside. It has been very popular. It has been very much needed. So I think that it should really be maintained, just because the fact that we can't really have every faith that in a local election, it's actually going to be able to pull in the crowds in the same way the London elections did. So I think it'd be very important to ensure that people do still feel drawn to vote on the day. Thank you.
Considering the time, I am going to follow the example of Northolt Mandeville and have a vote on this one as well. I think Councillor Woodruff.
I mean, we've got the councillor for Perivale here. Is there no reason why he can't say something?
Would he like to say it briefly? I mean, we've got some feedback already, but
yeah, that's all right, Chair. I'm happy if you're going forward, but it's very important to keep that Porto Cabin remains. And as you understand that, it's the St. Nicola Church and Perivale is a part of school street closure, so that will be difficult to reach there. So I'm happy to go for the vote, please. Thank you.
Chair, could I ask that we also throw in the option of using the school? So we've got the three options: the RO preliminary proposal, which looks like it's not accepted because it looks like so the option that we're proposing, the option to put the temporary hut back, but also there is a third option that whereby we could amalgamate the two at Perivale Primary. Is that
still a
okay?
two-way vote, but between the school and the temporary polling, or a three-way vote? I'm going to propose that it's a simple vote between the temporary polling place and the suggestion of Perivale Primary School, which obviously hasn't been explored yet anyway. But
and just to support the sorry, and just to quickly with the primary, it doesn't necessarily mean, I mentioned it was me that said with the closure of a school. Obviously, we work with the schools as closely as we can. As soon as it's known that we're going to be using the school, then obviously we liaise with them by letter, by phone call, by visits, and we strongly encourage them. They have a number of inset days, which are staff training days, whereby the school is shut anyway. So we try and encourage them to use that first Thursday in May each year as a day, and many schools take that up and work that very successfully. So it doesn't actually always equal a loss of school day. It is down to the school and their preparation and planning ahead, forward planning, that they can actually, it does often mean that it's not a lost day, but as I say, that's not always the case, but just to say that.
Okay, yeah, they could build it into a teacher training day or something.
Chair, can I just be clear? So we're voting on either just Perivale Primary or the newly proposed one plus the temporary. They're the two options.
Correct.
Sorry, it seems like the St Nicholas Church is not terribly popular because of where it is.
But we're not saying just the temporary site. We're saying the temporary site plus St Nicholas's Church. Because if we're just saying the temporary site, then it's unfair for the people who live at the other end of the polling district.
Sorry, yeah, can you clarify, Ross? We would still retain
so,
the church for the
yes, we would.
Part. Yes, right. Sorry.
Correct. So we put a line through the middle. Yes, Santok, we would put a line through there and separate the two. So it would
3 ways. Yes.
Sorry, can I just clarify the alternative? So you either have 2 polling districts, one voting at St Nicholas, one voting at Lee Road, or they both vote at Perivale School.
Correct.
Right. Okay. Sorry for the confusion on that. Councillor Rice, briefly.
Just wondering at this stage, is it worth just maybe having 2 separate votes? Maybe one vote to say keep the polling station or not, and then if we don't keep it, explore the option whether we explore the option of the school or not. I don't know if that's going to make things any easier, especially since there's only 5 of us voting, or 6 of us if there's a casting vote.
I'm going to try not to complicate it too much, so I'm going to have just one vote. If we end up, well, let's have the vote and take it from there. So the choices are vote. The first one is, do you want a temporary polling station and St Nicholas, in other words, 2 polling districts, or alternatively, do you want them both to go to Perivale School? So all those in favour of the first option, the temporary polling place and Lee Road. Oh.
Chair.
The local councillor said he was happy for a vote.
Yes, but can I just remind the panel that St Nicholas Church and Perivale Primary School, they are not far at all. So now we are discussing about the removal of the porter cabin, which is on the Lee Road. So the growing concern here is to keep the temporary polling station on the same place, and the vote, I think, should be either the temporary polling station or St Nicholas Church.
Otherwise, it's not fair for people who live on the bottom of that. If you're just saying either the temporary polling station or the St Nicholas's Church, that's fine for people who live north of, is it Bilton Road? But it's not fair for people who live in the south end, is it? If everyone has to go to Leland Road, even if you live, let's say you live by that church.
Councillor Conti, can I just remind you, St Nicholas Church polling district will work as it is. That's a different polling district. We are not saying either of them. St Nicholas is already either Scout Hut will go or not go, but St Nicholas will work as it is.
Yeah, but that's what we're voting on.
That's right.
All right, so I'm going to try to bring back some order. Sorry, Ross, can you just clarify, in previous elections, where have people voted in this whole area, or is this an existing polling district, or has it been changed? Have we lost Ross, or maybe run out of time?
Santok?
Hi, sorry, no, I am still here. Darren, is it possible for you to overlay that on the screen in front for the members?
There were
Sorry to
also
put you-
some temporary changes, obviously, for
merged-
the May 2021 elections. I understand that St Nicholas Church was used as the only polling station in that area in May 2021. and we did have a higher than average turnout for that single polling
So,
station.
so Darren has overlaid that for you there. So the green, correct, Darren, was the old.
Yeah, so we have merged two polling districts. So or existing JD and JE. So JD is where the temporary hut is, Lee Road, Empire Road, and St. Nicholas is for JE.
Sorry, I'm going to have to ask Councillor Mahmood, I'm confused. You don't want to go back to that model?
Which model we are talking about?
Sorry, the exist in the past where the north west corner voted in the temporary polling.
Yeah. Temporary polling station, and the rest of the district will be voting on St. Nicola.
Yes, right.
So, yeah.
Okay, Helen.
Chair, just to explain, probably a bit late in the day now, some of the methodology in the review. A number of the temporary polling stations, as we said, were necessarily changed for the May 2021 elections for health and safety reasons, primarily arising out of the COVID crisis. All of those officers obviously evaluated, as we always do. We had a debrief, and in nearly all the cases where those temporary polling stations were removed, we felt as a result that actually the things worked very well without them. There were higher than average turnouts. We didn't have any complaints. So where that was the case, we have, as part of this review, proposed that those temporary polling places that were removed on a temporary basis actually remain removed on a permanent basis. So that is why, that is part of the rationale behind a number of these suggestions.
Okay. Okay, can you explain the 3 votes you would see?
The other vote is to have St. Nicholas and Lee Road reinstated. And the other vote is for what is shown on that map. One at St. Nicholas.
And sorry, it's Ross again. And just to add, obviously you can tell I'm keen to get rid of the temporary polling station. So if indeed the vote was to put it back, so we have St. Nicholas and the temporary hut basically back as it was, could we then have another vote to see if the panel would be happy to get rid of both of them and instead replace with Perivale Primary School? Is that clear?
This is getting so complicated. Sorry, Chair. Can't we? It seems very clear that the view
3 options.
of Nicholas Church does not seem to be acceptable to people in this room. So could we then not just have the option of not Pitshanger Primary, Perivale Primary, sorry, or reverting back to what it has traditionally been, you know, that and Leland, rather than having it? I just think we're just overcomplicating matters.
Okay, let's have a vote with 3 options. First, vote A, Perivale Primary School for both, or for the whole district. Sorry, I should explain what we're voting. Then vote B is for St. Nicholas Church and the Lee Road temporary, and vote C is St. Nicholas Church for the whole district. So all those in favour of A, Perivale Primary School. All those in favour of St. Nicholas Road and Lee Road. And St. Nicholas Church for the whole lot. Seem to have.
Well, cast and vote has
Yes,
tied.
exactly. It's not like 3-3 and then I throw my vote in.
No,
Yeah.
so it's 3-2.
Right.
Then you make it a tie. So it doesn't. It's not.
My understanding was that the chair gets a vote on the matter, and if with the chair's vote there's a tie, then the chair would get a second casting vote.
Yes, I will cast my casting vote for St. Nicholas Church and Lee Road temporary polling place. But thank you. Long and healthy debate. I'm glad to say that the next ones are much less controversial. Next is Pitt's Hanger, which I believe there have been no comments on. After that, sorry.
I don't mean to be a pain, a very quick
Yeah.
thing on Pitt's Hanger. I mentioned it earlier in reference, I was talking about Ealing Broadway, and it may just be because of practicalities. Obviously, KD and KF are both tiny polling districts. And is it just because, I know KF is essentially in one estate. Is that the reason that it requires its own polling station? It just seems, it's also a very short walk from the polling station for KE, which is just down on the Argyle Road. So it just seems like we've got 3 polling stations in a very close proximity. And I was just wondering whether there's any way that could be rationalized to 2 polling stations. But if there's specific reasons for it, then I'm happy. But it just seemed, looking at the map, they just seemed all very, very close to each other.
Well, Ross, before you come in, I think it could be KD is, the Copley Close estate, which is very distinct, sort of has traditionally always had its own polling station, I imagine.
That's off by the railway.
Yes, yeah, exactly. And KF, well, it includes the Gurnell Leisure Centre site, which is earmarked for a considerable sort of housing development. So that could become, larger votes. But Ross, can you explain, or Helen?
So just to clarify, with Gurnell Leisure Centre, it would be if and when housing is built on that site, then it would be this panel could meet again to consider polling place. We don't have to anticipate that now, unlike the wards situation where you did have to, things are set in stone for perhaps 25 years. Polling places we can change very quickly.
Yeah, just to come in, it is all about Copley Close, the railway line. It's a distinct area. I think historically over the years, this panel has always been very pro, very, very pro. It's having its own polling place, and there's been difficulties because the community centre has been smashed down, and we've often had to play about there. But Santok, do you want to add at all to that?
Yeah, exactly what you said. It has been because it's a kind of in an effort with a certain kind of population that we've had to have that on Copley Close.
Councillor Kelly, very briefly.
Yeah, well, just exploring this map, if you were to take away the North Ealing Primary School, sorry, move the KB one to North Primary School, and then KA could come to be going to KE's polling booth. It seems the one in KA could service both KA and KB. You can make it a double polling booth. Like, historically, some polling booths can service two polling booths.
Coming up with an option here, and then we haven't asked anybody, portfolio holder or anyone else, about whether they're happy with that. I would prefer to just go ahead with this, what we got on paper, but I take your point.
I mean, as an officer, I mean, obviously I'd be delighted to lose. I mean, North Ealing Primary could take KA and KB. I'm just dramatically quickly looking through the electorates. It would, just over 4,000. That would make it. But if there wasn't any objections against that, then that would certainly, every little helps that we could merge KA and KB into North Ealing Primary. That seems quite sensible to me, but
is KB currently a temporary polling station?
No,
Pithanger,
Cape
the church.
Pithanger, isn't it?
Yeah.
I think. Yeah.
Might be the Methodist Church. I think
Yeah.
it's Methodist Church. Did you have an answer to KF as well, whether KF could combine with KE, which I think
Yeah, 'cause that's a really short
original query, wasn't it?
That's literally a couple of minutes walk round the corner.
Yeah. YK, I mean, we get why KD has its own, because that's, I mean, we all know, and Love Copley Close, which is separated by the railway line, but the Gurnell Grove estate is not, and so presumably, I think that was your question, wasn't it, Councillor Conti?
Again, I mean, I would be, supportive of that if the panel were to agree to merge KF with KE. So it would be the sports pavilion at KE.
Right.
Could that take the additional what would be 812? So could that take another 450 electors? So probably ending up another 150 on a parliamentary, 150, 200.
Okay, it is quite a small polling place. If it's a small number, I think it could manage, but if it's a large number, then no.
I'm going to put my foot down as chair and say that, yeah, okay, let's merge KA and KB to both vote out of North Ealing Primary School and leave the rest untouched. And, let's see if the consultation is happy with that. Are we all okay with that?
Yeah.
Sorry, no. As Santosh said, it's quite a small polling station. Might create problems.
I think that will require of it. We'll have to do a site visit on that, which we could do anyway. And when we reconvene, we can always raise that, the results of our investigations into that, if that's helpful.
Okay, yeah, that'd be good. That'd be helpful. Okay, so we're going to move ahead on that basis of merging KA and KB. Okay. Moving on to South Acton. I don't believe that. Councillor Sabiers, are you still with us?
I am still with you. Yeah, this is fine. It's not really any changes overall, so it's all okay.
Okay. Southall Broadway, again, I don't believe there's been any comments on that. And the same goes for Southall Green, I believe, which I know it's not quite finished. Southall West is the brand new one. I think it's a shame they didn't call it Southall Gasworks. I think it would have been more redolent. But
it was considered as part of the naming discussion.
Yeah,
Chair.
Southall West.
There was a very long debate.
It's a bland name we've chosen in the end. But I think those two are existing polling stations in the, what were they, Southall Broadway previously?
Yes, that's right. Yes.
Pretty uncontroversial. In the future, we may have to create, we'll probably have to create a new polling district in the south and a new polling station, but that's for the future. And then we have Southfield, Anybody want to comment on that? Councillor Ball?
Yeah, so the new CB polling district, it's a sort of an odd L-shaped one to include the new bit along the Vale, and it is quite a long trek from Davis Road in W3 to Southfield School, and also it's not straightforward by car either, because there's you can't drive the obvious route. So I think, you know, we should think about essentially reinstating it, because essentially the bit that sticks out is the part that was in East Acton Ward previously.
Southfield Panhandle.
The Southfield Panhandle. CB I'm talking about. So CB, you've got the western part of CB is what was already in Southfield, and then you've got the extra bit sticking out that includes Valletta Road and so on up to Davis Road, which is, say, it's difficult to get from there to the polling station.
Rebecca or Ross, can you explain why that was drawn up in such a way?
I think it's a hangover from the ward change. So it's where we've changed the ward boundaries there to accommodate. And so we've obviously selected a station that's as central as you can with a shape of a 7 there, really, isn't it? Sorry, it would be a backwards 7, but I'm not so sure, Santok, what are the options up in that top right-hand corner? First of all, Darren, sorry to put you on the spot, is it possible to ring that for an electorate, or is that a bit too much? Can we see what the electorate is up in that corner?
Ross, everyone, why couldn't they cross the road to what was regarded as an underused AED in East Acton? They could cross the road into there, so you have a larger, double polling station there.
Yeah, I was about to suggest the same thing as well, where they could go across to the Vale Estate. I mean, it's a big road to cross, but there are a good couple of crossings there. It's easy enough right at that point, up Bromyard Avenue and a bit further along.
Councillor Ball, have you got a comment on that?
I think that would be more natural than going all the way down to Southfield School. Yeah.
So, sorry, so the panel possibly. So we would look to move, create another polling district for that lot up there, but have their polling station as Acton Vale, but that's already serving in East Acton, so we'd need to split that station. Santok, while you're on here, Acton Vale Community, could that take a double?
I haven't seen it for a long time, but it'll be a bit tight. May do. We'll have to have a look.
Okay.
I can't imagine the exact size of it right now.
And Councillor Sabers, you didn't think it'd be a problem crossing that A road there? There are crossing points.
I don't think going across the Uxbridge Road would be a problem. Yeah, or that one. I cycle down that one a lot, and yeah, there's enough crossings there for people.
It's
okay.
People from that area would expect to cross a lot anyway.
And just
than Southfield.
Well, we can do that. Is the panel in agreement then? It is too far for them to get to Southfield Road, too awkward. All respect to Councillor Ball, is that kind of, the panel agrees that that's unsuitable, and so we need to look at that? Yeah.
I agree. From on the active front.
Okay. Well, as Darren's drawn there, I recommend then that we'll cut that off. Maybe go even a bit lower. I don't think there's anything there though. The sewage works there, but we'll go to get them into AD. We'll do a site visit, Santok, very soon, possibly tomorrow.
Yes. Okay.
Okay, we'll try and undertake a site visit first thing tomorrow to make sure that that can take it. It probably can. If it can't, well, let's go on the basis it can. So if we'll go that we can put it in, we'll put it in there. If not, Helen, any suggestions if we discover tomorrow that that can't take that electorate?
We can put it into the consultation and maybe bring it back to the panel in the October meeting, and it'll be feedback into the consultation from the from officers. I guess alternatively, actually, I do have a suggestion, Chair. If it can't, perhaps you could, as part of the recommendations coming out of this meeting, you can authorise me, following consultation with you, to suggest an alternative for the purpose of the consultation.
Yeah.
And alternatives would be either Southfield School or I can't. Could you move the map north slightly, Darren, please? So I'm trying to remember where the East Acton polling station. Yeah, or Kingfired, or another fixed station in that area. I don't think I can face the prospect of even suggesting a temporary hut.
Okay, so if Ross and Santosh, if you're able to do a site visit tomorrow and then liaise with me and Helen about what you've discovered, and we'll take it from there.
Yeah, we'll do.
Obviously, the default position, if we can possibly manage it, would be at that Bromyard Avenue station. Yeah.
Okay, thank you. I think this is the final one. Yes, Walpole. And I don't think there was major controversy on this one. We've taken out a polling station in the top, very far north of it, but we don't think that'll be a problem moving it down in GA.
St. John's Church.
Okay, thank you very much. I'm very aware of the time, and thank you for everybody for such a long meeting. Don't think there's any more on the agenda, is there? In which case, thank you very much for your attendance. And